This is a continuation of the series on matter, time and consciousness. You may find this easier to follow if you watch the previous parts. Here I'm going to discuss how entropy and consciousness are related and can both be seen as attributes of the fifth dimension. Now, returning to our one-dimensional line, when we view it, we are seeing it from outside of the one dimension. We are seeing it in the second dimension, in this case looking down on the line from above. Similarly, when we are looking down on a two-dimensional surface, we do so from the third dimension as we do when we see a video screen. In exactly the same way, if we look at a three-dimensional object, such as this bottle, we can only appreciate the shape of the object in 3 dimensions by moving it around. The bottle from one angle would not be recognizable as the same item when seen from a different angle. So movement is a relationship between the spatial dimensions and the time dimension. In other words, without moving into the next dimension, time, we cannot appreciate the three-dimensional pattern. So it's apparent that in order to appreciate a pattern, we have to view it from the next dimension. Now, this is true of 1, 2, and 3 dimensions. When we form images in our mind, these images are 4-dimensional. They take place in space and time. When we recall events, we are, as it were, standing outside of space and time in order to see the whole of the sequence. We have established, though, that in order to see patterns, we have to be in the next dimension. So this raises the question, how is it that we can see patterns in space and time? Now, the reason we can comprehend events that happen in space and time is because our consciousness is outside of space and time. In other words, our consciousness exists in the 5th dimension. I want to digress here and talk about patterns. Now, for instance, an example of a pattern is that on a Turkish carpet. The pattern fits the carpet, and these patterns are designed so they either cover the length and the width of the carpet, or they repeat, sometimes in slightly different ways, through the carpet. The pattern is two-dimensional and is made of coloured threads. So imagine an ant that starts at one end of the carpet and walks its length. As it walks, it will see the colours of its surroundings change. Because the ant is caught up in the 2 dimensions of the carpet, it is unable to see the overall pattern. It might be aware of colour changes and could possibly explore the changes in colour as it moves through the carpet, but it's unable to visualise the pattern that it makes. It's comparable to seeing a list of numbers and the same information in a graph. A pattern is not apparent from the numbers, but becomes clear when seen in a graph. In order to see the totality of the pattern in the carpet, we must stand outside of the carpet. In other words, we must step into the 3rd dimension. Now, most people see life in terms of a cash register, to use a metaphor. There's a series of events, and each event is like an item on a till roll. The events are unrelated. When the roll runs out, we die. People think this is true of our lives or any events. The events are seen as random with no ultimate purpose. A different way of viewing life is like the pattern on a Turkish carpet. There's a design that can only be viewed from outside of the carpet. It repeats, it has an order and a pattern. In exactly the same way as we get 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional patterns, we can see that there are 4-dimensional patterns. We call these cycles, waves or events. What people perceive as random patterns are often part of a bigger cycle. These cycles may be very small units, such as the vibration of atoms, to massively long cycles, such as the movement of the sun around the galactic centre. As well as these natural cycles, there are patterns of life, our daily and weekly routines, for example. There are patterns everywhere, from the process we use to move an arm and a leg to the body clock cycles and so on. When we look at the patterns of our day-to-day activity, they are similar but not identical. Each day is slightly different, in the same way as each book is slightly different. When we step back and observe other people, we can see the same patterns repeating in their lives. Most people are unable to see the patterns in their own life because they don't have the distance that objectivity gives you. There is a saying that history repeats itself. These repetitions of history are patterns in space and time. Now, we saw that rising entropy is the shortest distance between 2 points in the fifth dimension. We saw that as entropy rises, it requires more intelligence to understand. We can now see that consciousness can be explained as an attribute of the fifth dimension. It's like seeing a stain on a carpet. The stain is a snapshot. We can't be aware of the overall pattern without seeing the events in time. We see the results of entropy. The reality of the increasing complexity of the universe cannot be understood from the standpoint of our limited four-dimensional existence. Consciousness exists in a fifth dimension. If you're only familiar with the three spatial dimensions, the concept of time as the fourth dimension would seem very strange. In the same way, the concept of consciousness as the fifth dimension probably also seems strange. Entropy is an attribute of the fifth dimension, and potential energy can only be understood with reference to the fifth dimension. What we call consciousness is the ability to construct four-dimensional patterns which exist in an alternative dimension. Some of these patterns are based on reality, memories and images. Others are fictitious. It may be that our memories don't conform to similar memories held by others, and we can also create fictitious worlds in our mind that have little relationship to the real world. In fact, we do this every night in our dreams. Although we can understand these relationships, we seem to be lacking a picture. We're like the ant crawling across the carpet. We see the changes, but we can't see the overall pattern because we have to be outside of our five-dimensional consciousness in order to see the complete picture. Taking the metaphor of dimensions to the next stage, we can see that just as our space-time continuum is constructed from multiple three-dimensional worlds, each separated by Planck time, our five-dimensional universe is made up from four-dimensional patterns existing in different consciousnesses. We are, in that sense, our own universe. So if the universe exists in our consciousness, can a universe exist that is separate from our consciousness? The simple answer is no. A universe can't exist without three spatial dimensions or without time, and it can't exist except within the context of a fifth dimension. You know, in Seattle, there's a Boeing Everett factory, one of the largest buildings in the world. We're like ants in the corner of that building. We see a very small part of the building, and of the purpose of the building, we can have no comprehension. We are all our own universe. There is no universe outside of our perception of it. However, the universe exists in space and time. There is an aspect of human consciousness that exists in a sixth dimension and can therefore comprehend all aspects of space and time and even experience the reality of another person or consciousness. I shall explore this in the next video.